the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Moscow for a 3-day state visit to strengthen cooperation ties with Russia. Xi is set to hold talks with President Vladimir Putin before attending a formal reception later on Wednesday. On Thursday and Friday, he is expected to travel to St. Petersburg to attend an economic forum hosted by Putin. The two leaders will later sign a joint declaration on global partnership and strategic cooperation with the hopes of entering a new era. And as the Chinese president's visit gets underway, the leader of Russia's Communist Party has called on the two leaders to join together to deal with the enormous challenges facing the world. Hennady Zyuganov says some of the benefits and opportunities from Russia and China working together can already be seen throughout the Belt and Road Initiative.
We are at a stage when Russia, China and the world face enormous challenges, when we need to be organised and join forces as a team in order to counterbalance US sanctions, military challenges and NATO's aggressive behaviour. Because without the close interaction of our countries, it will be difficult to solve these problems.
In other news, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, has summoned the country's National Defense Council, declaring a permanent session in the wake of multiple coup attempts. Alongside the assembled representatives of the government, President Maduro declared that they would guarantee the protection of the Bolivarian Republic against any attempt to destabilize them. He also addressed the new elections for the National Constituent Assembly and negotiations with the opposition in Norway.
The country wants the renewal of the National Assembly. It's a special theme for the Security Council. It's something, the reason and the moral right to succeed in doing so. We will ask God to give us the wisdom necessary for the Security and Defense Council to be able to take the initiatives our nation needs.
The president went on to condemn the Venezuelan opposition for aligning themselves with the United States and their imperialist aspirations.
Their conspiracy to hurt the country from inside continues and is entering a phase of madness and exasperation. I condemn North American imperialism and the traitors by their side before the country and before the world. They've entered a new phase of madness and frustration.
The Institute of Legal Medicine in Nicaragua has concluded that skeletal remains found in the department of Carazo matched with Bismarck Martinez, a Sandinista who was kidnapped during the 2018 failed coup. Analysis of genetic markers showed that the remains coincided with the DNA of the children and brothers of the victim. The case of Bismarck Martinez made a big impact in Nicaragua since he was well known for representing innocent people who suffered at the hands of violent right-wing opposition groups. The attempts to destabilize the Sandinista government of Daniel Ortega began in April 2018 and lasted months.
15 polymorphic genetic markers were analyzed in order to determine the identity, and 25 polymorphic genetic markers were subsequently analyzed. These two types of analysis allow for the determination of the affiliation that exists between the family members of Bismarck Martinez.
A group of former ministers of education in Brazil have expressed concerns at President Jair Bolsonaro's education policies. The group, which is made up of ministers from past administrations, including former presidential candidate Fernando Haddad, has accused Bolsonaro of politicizing education policies. Recently, tens of thousands of students marched across Brazil against Bolsonaro's controversial education policies, which include cutting education spending and changing curriculums.
That is why we are meeting today, to release a statement, a call to the nation, so that national policies should be separated from politics. They can't be the object of party conflicts.
Education needs certain fundamental guarantees, and teachers' autonomy and freedom of belief are absolutely non-negotiable. There cannot be persecutions of this kind. Teachers lost respect within Brazilian society because of external interference in the system.
Peru's Congress has been debating a motion of confidence presented by the government of President Martín Vizcarra. Vizcarra's Prime Minister Salvador del Solar arrived at Congress to support the motion. It is part of the president's attempt to push through a package of anti-corruption reforms, which a majority in Congress has been resisting. If the motion is approved, the law will also be passed. If it isn't, the president could dissolve Congress. Thousands of Paraguayan families have been affected by heavy floods. Residents of the town of Alberdi were left homeless after heavy floods hit the area. Buildings have been destroyed and communication infrastructure has been shattered by strong rains. Thousands have been forced to evacuate their homes in recent weeks due to torrential rains which began last month.
If we're talking about the number of those affected, I think there are about 15,000 people affected, because as the road is closed, directly or indirectly, we're affected by the rising water.
Argentina is already preparing for elections in October, and it's clear that the neoliberal policies implemented by the current president, Mauricio Macri, will continue to affect the population and whoever is elected president.
Since he came to office in 2015, President Mauricio Macri has increased the prices of public services by over 2,000%. He then decided to raise the price of gas by another 30%, along with other increases.
There are already increases of 2,500% in electricity, as well as in gas. But now the government is trying to slow down the price increases because 2019 is an election year, and the re-election of Macri's Cambiemos alliance is seriously in question. This is why there's an agreement with the utility companies not to continue increasing prices. However, the cost of gas and electricity will still rise, and the consequences of this will further aggravate Argentina's recession.
Although the Macri government said it wanted to freeze prices, this was not quite accurate. People were able to put off their payments, but the increases in electricity and gas will feed through later.
In April this year, due to the terrible economic crisis caused by their own economic policies, the government launched an economic package of so-called economic and social measures to alleviate the situation of the workers. This package was meant to freeze the cost of the public services, but it didn't really do that. For example, an 8% increase of the price of electricity was suspended, but it was already gone up 40%, and in the further 8% rise and was just postponed.
The cost of healthcare has also risen sharply, and people's wages are not sufficient to cover such prices. As a result, there has been a decrease in the consumption of medication and basic medical services.
All the increases in the cost of health services are tied to the dollar exchange rate. This has been very unstable in Argentina, and that is having a major impact. It is highly probable that in the coming months, maybe not in June, but later, we will see more inflationary pressure resulting from the exchange rate.
There are just a few months to go before the presidential election, but regardless of who wins, more increases in the cost of services will come into effect later in the year and hit the pockets of ordinary Argentinians. Without a doubt, the country is facing a situation of great uncertainty and economic hardship.
We have more stories coming up. Don't go away.
June, World Environment Day.
Welcome back. 1 week after Trinidad and Tobago signed a new deal with global energy giant Shell in the Netherlands, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley visited the company's Wood Creek campus in the U.S. The tour of Shell's Texas facility, the PM and his delegation received an update on the company's business, as well as a review of its planned growth portfolios for Trinidad and Tobago. The milestone agreement will see Trinidad and Tobago getting increased revenues from the sale of liquefied natural gas delivered from fields in and around the island. Barbados plans to do away with the secondary school's entrance examination known as Common Entrance SEA or 11+ exam throughout the region. Barbadian academics such as Professor of Education Joel Warrican have described the UK inherited test as unjust because of its elitist construct. He says the exam was initially designed to ensure the best white students go to the top schools, but pupils who can afford tutoring often have a leg up on those that cannot. Parents and educators alike have also argued that common entrance places great stress and exam-based anxiety on the shoulders of children much too early in their lives.
So that while Santia starts the conversation over the next 6 months about the abolition and replacement of the common entrance, the creation of middle schools, and giving people the chance to decide what school they want to go to at 13 and 14 instead of 10 and 11 at the end of second form, that they then can decide whether they want to go into science or whether they want to do technical or whether they want to do humanities or whether they want to do sports or whether they want to do history and geography or whether they want to do commerce or whether they want to do IT. Every school becomes a top school.
The state funeral for Jamaica's former Prime Minister Edward Seaga will take place on Sunday, June 23rd. The government has announced that the service will be held at the Holy Trinity Cathedral in Greater Kingston, known as the corporate area. A national period of mourning has also been declared from June 19th to the 22nd. Ahead of the funeral, Seaga's body will lie in state at several locations. Seaga, Jamaica's 5th Prime Minister, died last Tuesday following a battle with cancer. Members of the Caribbean LGBTQ community celebrated Pride at this year's parade in Queens, New York. Queens-based queer advocacy group Caribbean Equality Project also took part in the festivities, happily displaying pride in their Caribbean heritage and identity. The event also commemorates the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, which had seen 6 days of protests and violent clashes following a police raid of the Stonewall Inn, a gay club in New York. Ecuador's Constitutional Court hasn't reached a decision yet on same-sex marriage, following an official discussion on Tuesday. Without specifying the exact date, the Constitutional Court took to Twitter to announce their decision will be made public in the coming days. Various LGBTQ organizations in Ecuador are eagerly awaiting the decision. They say that if it is positive, Ecuador will finally join the many countries that have legalized same-sex marriage. The head of social organization Equidad has said all Ecuadorians should be able to enjoy the same right and that the measures taken by the president have not been effective.
Lawful union in Ecuador does not work. That's why we believe in Ecuador everyone should be able to enjoy the same rights. Whether you use these rights or not, that's a personal decision. But a third person shouldn't be the one deciding who has rights and who doesn't.
With general elections approaching in Bolivia, the country's electoral court has started registering all eligible voters. We have more in this report.
The response to the announcement made by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal is evident in the centre set up for voter registration for persons that are aged 18 years and over.
It's the first time that you only need an identification card and proof of address.
I am registering for the first time. I will already turn 18 and I am registering to vote in this election, like every citizen should.
This process will continue until July 14th for Bolivians that live both locally and abroad.
In keeping with our electoral calendar, we start this phase, which will last for a period of 45 days. This allows people who are not enabled to cast their vote to register via the biometric voting lists, so they can participate in the October 20 elections.
1,541 biometric registration machines are enabled, of which 258 will go abroad.
We are working in Bolivia's 9 departments with more than 1,400 biometric registering equipment, which have been deployed to urban and rural areas. The electoral body and the civil registry service in particular are working to register Bolivians in the 22 countries abroad.
The Bolivian electorate is fundamentally young, with at least 50% of the electorate between 18 and 35 years old.
We call on young people not to wait until the last day. That we will be registering, which is July 14. It is better to do it before.
The registration abroad began in 22 countries, and in the upcoming days it will extend to 33. The general elections will take place on October the 20th, and a total of 9 candidates are running.
Muslims around the world are celebrating Eid-al-Fitr, marking the end of the holy month of Ramadan. Eid, also known as the festival of breaking the fast, starts with the sighting of the new moon, and celebrations begin with special morning prayers. Thousands of Palestinians living in Israeli-occupied territories flocked to the holy Al-Aqsa Mosque to pray before heading to the graveyards at an ancient Muslim cemetery to remember their loved ones. President Mahmoud Abbas joined prayers in the occupied West Bank, wishing for the liberation of Palestine.
To all of us, for a happy Eid with health and safety, God willing. To our people and nation, believe our country will be liberated and returned to us. When the state of Palestine is established and its capital is Jerusalem, by God's will.
In Iran, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei led prayers in front of thousands at the Imam Khomeini Mausoleum in Tehran. During his sermon, the Supreme Leader strongly criticized both Bahrain and Saudi Arabia for, quote, enabling U.S. plans in the region. Iran has become a main target for U.S. President Donald Trump as his government continues to mount threats and economic sanctions on the nation. Muslims in Sri Lanka also gathered to celebrate the end of the holy month of Ramadan. These particular celebrations come under the shadow of recent anti-Muslim riots and campaigns against Muslim political leaders that sparked after the deadly Easter Sunday bombings, which left over 250 people dead. On Monday, Muslim ministers resigned from their posts amidst threats, as anti-Muslim groups have called for the boycott of Muslim-owned businesses.
On one hand, we pray that good things happen to those affected by the attacks. On the other hand, we pray that those who are actually responsible be exposed to the war and be destroyed.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad joined morning prayers at the mosque of President Hafez al-Assad in Damascus. Assad was accompanied by a number of government officials. Eid celebrations in Syria comes as government forces continue to secure villages in the provinces of Idlib and Hama. And as Muslims celebrate Eid-al-Fitr in Sudan, the chairman of the Transitional Military Council has offered to continue negotiations with the opposition alliance. The announcement comes one day after he scrapped all agreements made with the opposition, and 2 days after security forces reportedly killed 60 protesters who were staging a sitting protest outside the military headquarters. Protests have been ongoing in Sudan since the ousting of former President Omar al-Bashir, with protesters demanding that the military council hand over power to a civilian-led government.
Free citizens the past few days have witnessed sorrowful events resulting from the joint security force efforts to deal with certain threats and security complications. Unfortunately, events unfollowed, resulting in the fall of victims and of the injured. We are sorry for what happened. We pray for the souls of the martyrs and hope the quickest of recoveries for the wounded. the General Prosecutor has been directed towards investigating these events. The necessary legal measures will be taken as soon as possible, as we cannot allow any circumstances to stand in the way of achieving the goals of the revolution.
And in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the country's Muslim minority is urging the government to push for peace in the eastern regions as they gather to celebrate the end of Ramadan. Clashes have been ongoing in the east of the DRC between the Muslim minority groups and other religious groups. This comes as the country is experiencing an Ebola epidemic with at least 2,000 cases confirmed so far. We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
June, World Environment Day.
Welcome back. On the third day of his state visit to the UK, US President Donald Trump has joined a number of leaders in Portsmouth, England, to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Also known as the Normandy landings, it was the day US troops disembarked in France during World War II. Among the leaders joining Trump are French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and outgoing British PM Theresa May. Wednesday marks the last day of President Trump's visit to the UK, which has been marked by widespread protests. Tijani Mohamed Bande, Nigeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, has been elected as president of the 74th General Assembly. He will succeed Ecuador's representative, Maria Fernanda Espinosa. Bande will preside over the 74th session of the 193-member General Assembly, one of the UN's highest policy-making bodies. The session is scheduled to kick off in September. Members of South Africa's African National Congress Youth League have taken to the streets of Johannesburg, calling for the disbandment of the league's current leadership. The protesters are demanding for the holding of new elections to elect new leaders. They have accused the current leadership of failing to adequately assess the interest of young people. The group has vowed to continue protesting until their demands are met.
So we are saying we are sick and tired of selfish people who have never done anything for us as branches of the ANC Youth League. We are convinced that they will never take us anywhere. Hence we are requesting the NEC of the ANC that they must dissolve them and make sure that there is a structure that is appointed as a task team. Within 3 months, they must have taken us as branches to the national conference, wherein we'll renew the mandate of the ANC Youth League and elect a proper leadership of young people in this country.
And now we have more stories from around the world.
17 people remain missing in Indonesia after a cargo boat they were in sank on Saturday. The vessel capsized with 18 people on board. According to authorities, on Tuesday, one person was found by a passing vessel floating in a life jacket and is now receiving medical treatment.
Today we conduct search and rescue operations with the objective of finding victims from the sinking of the KM Lintas Timur, which was suspected to have sunk in Maluku waters.
In Thailand, former Democratic Party leader Abhishek Bejajiva has announced his resignation as a member of parliament. This comes after his party threw their support behind Prayut Chan-o-cha as the next prime minister. A vote for a new prime minister will take place for the first time since the 2014 coup.
The Democrat Party has decided to join the coalition pro-military government and support Prayut Chan-o-cha as prime minister. With respect to the party's resolution, I'm still against the decision. I'm resigning as a member of parliament from now on.
Meanwhile, in Russia, the China Railway Construction Corporation has created over 1,000 jobs under the Belt and Road Initiative. As one of the many projects co-handled by China and Russia, the Metro project is the first in Russia to be given to a foreign company. Moscow's Metro is a testament to the cooperation and people-to-people exchange between the two nations.
I enjoyed working here because during the last 2 years I was promoted quite a lot, because 2 years ago when I started working here I was in a quite low position, but still I have some opportunity and I catch this one. Our company giving this opportunity to all people.
And with that, we end our news brief. But you can find these and more stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.